Right, so I'm here at the Kirby Misperton Protection Camp, about 1.5 miles to the east of the village of Kirby Misperton. It's a Sunday afternoon, so we are pre-recording tonight's show, and obviously we have a lot of visitors who have come through to visit the camp and show their support. And it was with great pleasure that earlier today I met Jim George from Pennsylvania.
Hi, how are you?
Jim,
pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for dropping by. And Jim, you were telling me earlier that you have some direct experience of the unconventional gas industry in Pennsylvania.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Being from Pennsylvania in the Marcellus Shale region, actually, I'm from Pittsburgh, but I was working in the Marcellus Shale region for Geisinger Health System, and that's the heart of where it started. And I do a lot of data analysis and study, and one of the things we found out, you know, there were a lot of the early studies, and when I say earlier studies, where you had enough empirical data gathered over, you know, there was a lot of guessing on what's going to happen. But one of the things that we did start to notice was, and it was a consequence that we hadn't thought about, was the amount of traumatic injuries from the fracking trucks. Now, let me explain what that means. We're studying, everyone understands, the second one would be the upper respiratory, and I think that's sort of well understood. But as the fracking crews came in, they were from out of state, unfamiliar with the roads, driving on roads that weren't built for their trucks, and the traffic accidents that ensued, we had a much higher acuity of, meaning traumatic injuries. Okay.
Up to and including death,
oh yeah, there were death, but you know, it was just when you get hit by a fracking truck versus hit by another car, you're going to have more traumatic injuries. Completely, it caught everybody by surprise, straight off the time. The other one, there was a couple of other things that came out of that. Was the crews are itinerant. Most people don't understand that. They come in and they leave. They do the drills. They do their work and they leave. And what we found out, especially in the rural, the smaller communities, is the affordable housing dried up. They were displacing people there that were paying maybe, and I have to talk in American terms, $500 a month for a small cottage. Well, you've got someone that's coming from Texas or Arkansas who's going to pay $1,000. Their leases weren't renewed, and they had to move. So, you know, there's been a lot written about the health aspects and those things, but these little collateral items are really what damage the community.
And with a massive influx of itinerant workers, yes, I'm guessing there were other problems, such as other industries moving into the area. Everybody
knows that, you know, when that happens, you know, prostitution, some crime, those things happen. Yes, that did occur. And then it sort of travels, it goes away from them. But then what's happening now in Pennsylvania, and you know, I've been back in the UK now for about 6 weeks, is, you know, the jobs are leaving. Okay, so they're 37% off peak right now, down for the jobs. And just last year, year to year, last 12 months, the jobs related to the fracking have dropped 27%. And the economy feels it. Now, you know, it's interesting for me, you know, I come to England that, you know, Pittsburgh really turned them around. Well, I can tell that's bullshit, okay, and I'm sorry to say it that way. I mean, Pittsburgh's not a coal town, it's a steel town, so somebody's got to explain that to me. And, you know, I grew up there, I see it happening. It's about services and those types of things. So I'm really at a loss for who says that, okay? I live, you know, my wife and I have a place by the Consul Energy Center in Pittsburgh, and Consul Energy was one of the big fracking companies. Well, they've been a big coal company, and they had a 20-year lease to sponsor, put their name badge on our arena. Well, they're fallen on hard times, and they've jumped out of their lease 11 years early because they can't afford that. So I'm trying to think, where's this coming from? It's made some people rich, and I understand how it all works, but it's not the boom that you think it is in terms of Pittsburgh. So, you know, I want someone to explain that to me.
But I also understand that Pittsburgh actually banned fracking from within the city limits some 6 years ago or so.
Yeah, Allegheny County, which is what Pittsburgh is in, banned fracking. So, you know, so when you get outside of the Allegheny, you see the little fracking sites all around those particular places. And Pamela, my wife is off camera right now, she's been with me when we've woke up in the morning and the fracking trucks go by, the hydraulic trucks go by. When I say hydraulic trucks, you know, the pumps are portable, and they're very large lorries. Okay, when I say large, they're big. You remember how big they were? and they roll in and they're going to inject the water. Now, one of the things that we had happen twice now is, you know, the water that comes out, we talked about this, right? For me, I was ambivalent at first, but I did not realize that a lot of the fracking water is mildly radioactive. And that's what I was telling you before. I did not know this, and that's why a lot of the communities don't want radioactive water coming through in trucks or trains, because what happens if there's an accident? How do you abate that? Okay. And in Pittsburgh, they were bringing it through on rail cars. And the sand. Are you going to be using sand here?
Yeah, that's the proppant.
Yeah, and the sand, that's a long-term chronic risk, is the sand as well.
Silica, yeah.
The silica that comes out of that. And we've had 2 derailments that come through to Pittsburgh. Now, you know, if we're in such a boom country, do you know where Pennsylvania does with their water from the fracking company? Fracking?
Evaporation pits, or put it into waste disposal in New York?
They send it off to Ohio.
Oh,
because they don't want it they don't want it in Youngstown, Ohio, which is just over the border. They're having increased seismic activity, a la Oklahoma.
So it's re-injection wells.
Because they have more re-injection wells, and actually, the injection wells in the state of Pennsylvania are now governed by the federal government, and they have not allowed the leases they have not let them have the leases.
So the companies have been fracking the gas out of Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And I think evaporation pits are now banned, in Pennsylvania?
I don't know if they're banned, but what happened was, in my understanding of this, and you know, as I've come to learn it through both, you know, private sources and public sources, is early on they were treating them as just water drying ponds, sluice ponds, and then when they found out the benzene and the things that as it evaporates and the effects, they became more regulated. And I think it was around 2011, 2012, I'd have to be certain about that, is when the DER, Department of Environmental Resources in Pennsylvania, said, no, wait a minute, you're skirting the law here. You have to treat this as toxic is not the word, but hazardous waste. And up to that point, they weren't treating it as hazardous waste.
And I gather there have been some instances where the companies fracking in Pennsylvania have tried to dispose of the waste, the produced water, the waste products, at waste disposal facilities without declaring the radioactivity.
That's right. That's right. That happened a few years ago, and they got caught. And so they, you know, because you know what, it's just pure ignorance, and they're playing against our ambivalence. Let's face it. You know, it's not in my backyard, so most people don't care. And that's the more danger about the environmental. But
they're not in the backyard. I mean, we were talking also earlier about the direct health impacts, particularly respiratory. Respiratory,
yes.
Which, of course, tends to affect people that are downwind. And the prevailing winds come, I believe, from the south west.
That's right.
So basically, anybody living to the northeast is effectively downwind of the frac sites, and there's been a reported increase in respiratory issues.
Yeah, that's the second. That was the second early outcome after the traumatic, was the increase in upper respiratory issues. Okay, so in I can't give you exact classifications, but you know, people that are presenting in the emergency room, or what do you call them here?
A&E?
The A&E, yes. They're presenting at the A&E with congestion and chest problems. And, you know,
without realizing that it's related to
it could be related to that, or you know, you may have just been sensitive and now it's triggered it. Okay, and then how long do you go before you decide to go? Like you said, you know, in a rural community in America, not everybody has health care, so they may wait till they're really sick before they go to the A&E. When they go to the A&E, now they're further along. It's a much more, it's a higher level of care that costs more money, and you know, it's the impact is sort of, you know, I say collateral. It's a little bit larger than people really understand. So now, you know, from 2011 to 2016, you know, we're down 40% on the jobs. There's still a lot of people fracking, but the jobs are leaving, and you know, because it takes a year or so, right? And the fracking's done, and what are we left with? Pads, tanks, and ponds. That's it. You know, so.
And communities that have literally become, well, part of the sacrifice zone, because everybody else has left town.
That's right, right. They got stinky, burnable water. Have you ever seen this stuff?
Absolutely.
So they got stinky, when I say stinky water, it smells funny, it's slimy, some of it needs to be. There are, like in Waynesburg, which is just south of Pittsburgh and Novella, there are people that haven't been able to drink their tap water for 2 years. And they're still wanting, we call them water buffaloes, where they put a tank beside you, and that's what you're drinking out of, while they await the settlement from the companies.
Yeah. And of course, the company often provides the buffalo without actually accepting any responsibility.
Right.
They're just being neighbourly because they've heard the
right.
family have a problem with their water.
Yeah, so and you're talking people that lived in these communities 30, 40, 50 years, and now they're looking at, they want to retire. And for them, their house was their biggest investment. Now, what's the value of a house that doesn't have clean water?
Well, they can't sell them.
Yes.
So unless the gas company offers them a rock bottom price,
sign the deal and you're out, right?
Yeah.
And so those are the things. Fortunately, we're blessed that we're able to move on. But I know people that that have given their lives. When I say lives, they've worked their life. Their life's work has been the coal mine, the steel mine. Their investment is their house, and they're looking back over their shoulder, going, "Well, I made money for a few years, but now I don't. And what am I left with?" Right?
So now I understand that you basically live partly in Pennsylvania and partly here in North Yorkshire.
Yes.
And you're just a few miles away from the well site here at Kirby, Misperton. So, I mean, how did you feel? Obviously you had the experience of the abomination that this industry is within Pennsylvania, and now you find yourself threatened with going through the same thing again in North Yorkshire.
Yeah, what I don't understand here, and I'm going to take it a step back, you're in an area of outstanding natural beauty. It's a conservation area. We go to build a small house, we're told where to buy the brick, what the patina has to look like. Every little detail, you have to have an architect, you have to have an archaeologist, all these things everybody cares about. And then all of a sudden, 1, 2, 3, we're going to put a well right there. How does that work? I can't reconcile where we have to go through all this work to build a little home, but somebody can come in here and destroy the area. Okay. And what I particularly found disturbing is I didn't realize that your government had nationalized all the mineral rights and just took them. And so, to me, coming from Pennsylvania, what that is, you got the people who are issuing the permits are also the people that are benefiting from the sale, right? That's a conflict. That's a conflict of interest. That's very. I'm not going to say what I think that is, but I think that's a bit of horseshit going on. Okay, in Pennsylvania, you at least got your money. Okay, people aren't going to get. You're going to get some leasing rights for people to drive across your land, and that's where it ends. Okay, and if you think so. I haven't been able to reconcile it. My wife knows I get a bit, not militant, but how does that work? How did that happen? Who was asleep at the wheel within your government that said, we're just going to take all your mineral rights and we're going to grant people to come and destroy it? Well,
the government's hoping that the people of North Yorkshire and the rest of the north of England are still asleep at the wheel, of course. But fortunately, as we see here today at the Kirby Misperton Protection Camp, there's an increasing number of people who are becoming aware of the potential risk. But there's a lot of people in the community who still think that it's just one well. It's just an exploratory well here at Kirby Misperton. What's the harm in one well? I mean, what would you say to those people?
It's never one well. It's pure and simple. Once you let that genie out of the box, we find money. It makes people's head go crazy. They see, we're going to bring some jobs in. We're going to do this. We're going to do another one, and they wear you down. See, what happens is they wear you down. It's only just one. It's only just two. Here's some money for your community. It's just a few trucks. Next thing you know, it's multiple trucks. So you worry about your kids on the street. You got lots of cycling here. I'm a cyclist. You ever have a big lorry go by you on a small lane?
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
It's pretty damn scary. And I'm aware. There are people that aren't aware. They're going to turn and look. When you're a cyclist, and I'm off piste here a bit. When you turn and look what's coming up, you generally fade in front of them. I don't want that to happen, but those are those kinds of things. So, now you look at, I won't get on the path of housing value and all that, but you got snookered here, dude. They just came in and said, boom, you got it. We're going to put the lights up, we're going to make some noise, we're going to put some stuff in here, but it's just one. Right? A lot of good things, a lot of bad things start out with just one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a common observation. In fact, I have a good friend in Australia, Brian Monk, and he makes that observation. His farm sits in the middle of 18,000 gas wells in southern Queensland, and he says, Ian, all this just started with one well, and that's where we're at right now here in Kirby Misperton. Jim, how long are you over in the UK for? Probably
5 to 6 months, maybe more. We're working on
it. Right, so 5 to 6 months. So I mean, I'm guessing that there's a few communities around here that might be interested in inviting you to come talk to them, so you can share your experience from Pennsylvania. Would you be prepared to do that?
Yeah. I'm just a citizen too. I'm not an expert. But I can tell you what I see and what
but you're an independent observer, and you've lived in that environment, and you've seen it evolve from the just one world situation through to a mature industry to a dying industry, because that's what it is now in Pennsylvania. It's a dying industry.
That's right.
With more of these companies filing Chapter 11 insolvency in the UK, because they're just not able to fuel this Ponzi scheme anymore.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It is a Ponzi scheme in the end.
So there you go, that's Jim George, and a resident of Pennsylvania and also North Yorkshire. And as you heard, Jim would be delighted to share his experience with communities here in North Yorkshire and possibly even further afield who have yet to experience the abomination. And when we hear people say in this country that this is a novel industry, we don't have any experience of it and therefore we should just give it a shot, yet in places like Pennsylvania, this industry has been running now for close on 15 years.
15 years, yeah.
So there's 15 years of experience in Pennsylvania, 10 years of experience in southern Queensland. And, why is it that we are so arrogant in the UK that we think it's going to be any different? And I'm guessing, Jim, that you heard exactly the same gold standard regulation BS that is trotted out here right now.
Well, you never get it right the first time. Okay? So the regulations had to evolve, and without naming names, there were the first 4 or 5 years they were really getting snookered around the ponds. They were just treating it as just water ponds going on out, whether they were barrier sealed and how those types of things. And so there was a lot of sanctioned environmental things, environmental mishaps. Okay. And then when it caught up with them, the industry said, oh gosh, this is going to cost us a lot more money, we're going to go move to another place where we can make as much money. And it's just your problem. And that's the thing, whenever you deal with an itinerant kind of deal, you're left with the problems. Yeah. Because they're gone.
Absolutely. Well, fortunately, there's an increasing number of people in the UK that are not asleep at the wheel. We have still only had one well drilled and fracked in the UK, and that was nearly 6 years ago in the Fylde Peninsula, where Quadrilla actually returned just a few days ago. And this is incredibly arrogant of Quadrilla because, of course, the judicial review regarding the government overturning the Lancashire County Council decision to not allow Quadrilla, that judicial review will not be heard in the London courts until March. But Quadrilla have either been given the nod that they're going to be okay at the review, or they're just so arrogant that they've decided to plough ahead and start building the pads. And it's good to see the people of Lancashire now stepping up to the plate and letting Quadrilla know that they're not going to get a free ride. Well, Jim, it's an absolute pleasure to have met you today. Yes. And thanks for coming by the Kirby Misperton Protection Camp. I'm sure we're going to see
I'll see some more.
Bit more of you.
Yes.
And I really hope that some of the communities around here that haven't yet actually appreciated the full impact of what's about to be unleashed upon them will take up your offer to go talk to them.
So
Jim, thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Bye-bye.